Drew DeArmond, welcome into the game. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, Ryan. Always great to be on with you in Tuscaloosa, man. Here you had a wild show yesterday. How you doing so far on this Tuesday?
Oh, it was great. We're hanging out. We're just hanging out with the best fans, and it begins to build some anxiety. With fall camp opening up here in just a few hours. Now, I do have to ask. Okay, we've been spending a lot of time talking about delusional fan bases in the SEC. Drew DeArmond, we've put up an option. Now, you could go outside of the three, but Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn. Is there anybody that you would put in the top three than what we have right here?
No, I would not, and there's one that's easily outdistancing the other two right now. I can tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Who is it?
The Georgia Bulldogs. You talk to Georgia fans, they won the national championship game.
They did, didn't
and,
they?
Kirby Smart is the best coach in the college football, and he really didn't lose the game. The referees took it from him.
And now people in Tuscaloosa that you're not on social networks and don't have a chance to interact with these wonderful Georgia fans, it's the God's honest truth. They really think the officials influenced that game. And I've heard it all. From these Georgia fans. They're making Auburn look good.
They certainly are, and they are one delusional bunch. And I can tell you this: they don't want to just face the fact and the truth that yet again they choked on applesauce, and they didn't win a national championship. They haven't won one since Herschel Walker ran the football. They've only had really two chances, which was 2012 and 2017, and we know what the common denominator there is, and that is that Nick Saban is the thorn in their side.
All right, let's put it to the side just for a couple of minutes with Kirby Smart. Let's go back to 2015. Jeremy Pruitt took over, but for several years we were questioning the secondary here, that Kirby had lost some of his touch, some of his magic on that defensive side of the football. Going back to that championship game, you could even make the argument that it was still there, some of the problems in that secondary.
Well, yeah, I mean, the old saying was, third and Kirby. Because Alabama struggled and gave up a lot of big plays vertically in the passing game the last couple years at Alabama. But certainly, Kirby Smart, for the entire body of work at Alabama, when you look at what he did a heck of a job as a coach. I think he was a really good defensive teacher, and he could apply the defense. But the most overrated part of his reputation leaving Alabama, and he's been lumped into there because because Alabama had 7 straight number 1 recruiting classes, is Kirby Smart as a recruiter and as an evaluator. He was a good recruiter, not great individually. He certainly wasn't Mario Cristobal, Tosh Lupoy, and what we've seen out of Josh Gaddis thus far, the great work certainly that he's done at Alabama. So I think, but he has done a great job at Georgia. But I think we all know why that is.
So we're talking with Drew DeArmond, 97.7 The Zone at Huntsville, Alabama, and you look at Kirby Smart, and obviously when you've walked around, as you talked about, since the 80s, and that's all that you really have to hang your hat on is Herschel Walker VHS tapes or DVD tapes or whatever, and you think about you were so close to winning another national title, and then Alabama and Nick Saban snatched it out of your hands before you were able to really claim it. Is that what it is? Because these Georgia fans and people that don't understand, get on social networks. These people have lost their freaking mind.
Well, yeah, they really have. And the thing is, what they don't understand is the hardest thing to do is to win one. Alabama has done it 5 times in 9 years. They've made it look easier than it actually is. And when you break it all down, what makes the run even more amazing is Alabama. It can be argued they were a handful of plays away from from winning it in 2014, 2016, and then even in 2008 when they lost to Tim Tebow. I'm not going to say anything about 2010. They lost 3 games. That group kind of underachieved. It's probably the one time Nick Saban's team did. And then you can even say in 2013 too, because if they beat Auburn, they go to the SEC championship game. So Alabama, they've won 5. They could have won, as many as 8 or 9. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't think Kirby Smart's ever going to be able to reach that level of consistency. Do I think he could win a championship at some point in time? Certainly that could be the case. I mean, Les Miles won a championship, and he wasn't the greatest head football coach you're ever going to see from a strategic standpoint. But again, it's hard to do. It's hard to win a national championship. It's why Nick Saban is going to go down as the greatest coach of all time, Ryan, because when you look at his record, he's only lost 1 national championship game in his career, and that game came down to the final play, and Alabama led by double digits in the second half. So they're very hard to win. And the thing that's been even more amazing about Nick Saban's program than just finishing those time and winning 5 is the way that they've bounced back. Some programs like Texas, they never recovered from losing to Alabama. They were destroyed by it. Tim Tebow in Florida, they've never recovered from the drilling they took in 2009. And so Alabama has, in more ways than one, LSU has not recovered in 2011. Alabama has been a very resilient program, and to lose the way they did against Clemson, but then to come back and win the game against UGA and rip their hearts out and stomp on it on national TV was quite an accomplishment.
But, Drew, in all fairness, we've got to call it out for just a couple of minutes. How is Kirby pulling away in the recruit? Not pulling away from Alabama, but how is he pulling it off from a recruiting front? Is it that state? Is it geographically? Or how do you think Kirby Smart has had this much success on the recruiting front?
Well, certainly Georgia is a talent-laden state, and most of his work has been done in-state. And then when you're talking about going to Louisiana and you're talking about going to South Carolina and even, dipping into the state of Florida a little bit, all you can say is it's got to be a freeze warning.
Well, now, hold on. It's 91 degrees throughout the South. There's no way it could be a freeze warning. Yeah,
it is. It's Kirby Freeze. I mean, smart. I mean, that's obviously. I think Georgia's pushing the envelope to put it kindly in recruiting. I think they're certainly doing a great job. But if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. And I used to always the way I used to equate it with Hugh Freeze was, I guess, the running joke was that Laramie Tunsil grew up wanting to be a rebel. Well, I guess all these kids from outside of the state of Georgia have always grew up wanting to be a dog and play for a program that's never won anything since 1980.
Come on, Drew. They had Mark Richt. I mean, they were they claiming double-digit win seasons over there. They fired the guy.
Yeah, they did. They won 10 games a year, and they won 2 SEC titles in 2002 and 2005. And they were pretty consistent, but they couldn't win the big one. And now they believe Kirby Smart can get them over the top. Will he? Perhaps. Certainly he's ahead of schedule of where I thought he was going to be last year. I did not expect them to win the East. I did not expect them to play for the national championship. But the bottom line is, I think when all the money was on the table, Georgia choked and Alabama won the game. And now I think, and this is my personal opinion, that, sometimes things backfire on you. And this is the best way to equate what Kirby Smart's trying to do right now. He is this generation's Pat Dye. Pat Dye came along toward the end of Coach Bryant's career. He had worked for Coach Bryant just like Kirby Smart had worked for Nick Saban, and he felt like he could outlast, Coach Bryant and overtake Alabama. And he did for a short period of time, and then he ended up on 60 Minutes, and we know the rest of the story. Well, this time, there are some similarities with what Kirby Smart's trying to do. He has been underhanded. He has been ungrateful. He basically has turned around and burned every bridge he could to Tuscaloosa since he went to Athens. But the only thing about it is, whereas everyone could tell Coach Bryant was nearing the end of his career. All I think Kirby Smart has done is motivate Nick Saban to stay in the game, and he's pretty much processed nearly every coach in this league, and now I think he's motivated to certainly outlast Kirby Smart and continue to put him in his place. And having a rival now, certainly Tennessee and Auburn are always going to be, historically Alabama's biggest rivals. Florida for a while there was the first program Nick Saban had to conquer when he got to Tuscaloosa. Now he's been reinvigorated because you're going to have one, I think, year in and year out in Georgia that's certainly trying to carbon copy out everything Alabama's doing. But again, Nick Saban wanting to prove he's the best that has ever done it is going to be, I think, supremely motivated to continue to put Georgia in their place.
But you go to Georgia for a couple of minutes, and they've been so far behind in facilities. I mean, the crazy thing is I don't even know the date. It's hard for me to even think about when the indoor practice facility was not even there. I mean, I was a kid because it's been there since the late 80s, early 90s. Georgia just opened up an indoor practice facility. Chew on that for a minute.
Oh, that is just it's really pathetic when you come to think about it, because Ole Miss and Mississippi State even had indoor practice facilities, for crying out loud. Georgia, for a program that's supposed to be rich in tradition, you would think, and in the talent-rich state that they've always been in football, that their administration would have, back in the 80s, after they built a statue of Herschel Walker, would have built one by 1985. I mean, that was one of the first things Ray Perkins did, and as you said, when he took over for Coach Bryant. I mean, it's really stunning to me that they've dragged their feet that long, and it was a big sticking point for Mark Richt. He was extremely bothered by it. He knew that other programs had an advantage over him in that way, and he always wanted their administration to completely buy in and go and commit to football, and they would not. Now I guess they're doing that for their favorite son, Kirby Freeze. I mean, smart. But I'll say this, Georgia right now, they are a hot program. There is no doubt about it. But you have to manage the expectations. There has been only one program that has been able to do it. Pete Carroll could not do it. He could not sustain it at USC. We see what happened to them. There's a 30 for 30 now about them. The Miami Hurricanes, there's two 30 for 30s about them. They could not sustain the excellence. The Florida Gators could not sustain the excellence. Urban Meyer got run out of this league by Nick Saban and could not get the job done. Then you go back and you look at history. I mean, and no program, the Texas Longhorns and Vince Young, they had one moment in time, but then Alabama slammed that door shut, and their program is still trying to recover. Alabama, I made this statement a few years ago, and it's come to fruition. They were calling USC the greatest dynasty of all time when Pete Carroll and those guys were playing Texas for the national championship. They lost that game, and it was all downhill for USC after that. I told some people I felt like with what Nick Saban was building, and that Alabama would take care of him, their administration would be completely committed, that Alabama would show people what a true dynasty was, and they have. They've won 5 out of 9. I don't think they're anywhere close to slowing down, and this should be scary for the rest of college football, but I truly believe we have not seen Nick Saban's best football team yet, because they're just now evolving as a program, and now to me have a transcendent talent at quarterback, and I think they can put at least a couple of more trophies in the case in the next 4 years. And if they do that, this is going to be a runaway train as the greatest dynasty in history. And by that time, will Kirby Smart still be at Georgia? Perhaps. If he's winning 10 games a year, probably so. But he's going to have to with that talent that he's recruited, because if he didn't, it's going to be a story of underachieving, no question about it, because they're recruiting probably right below Alabama. This is like Ali Frazier, the way they're squaring off. And it should lead to some, epic SEC championship games starting this year, because I don't see anyone stopping Alabama and Georgia. And certainly Georgia will be supremely motivated to play Alabama. But the Crimson Tide will, I think, still have the best football team because they've got number 13. And I think number 13, no matter if it's Jake Fromm or Justin Fields, is the true difference.
All right, before we get into Alabama, and we certainly got a lot of questions there. We may even ask you to do an extra segment with us. I don't even know if you're possible, but we're 15 minutes. I got to ask one more Georgia question. Do you ever just sit back and you wonder the influence that fans have on programs. And we're talking about delusional fans. Auburn's got them. Georgia's got them. There might even be a few running around here. But certainly when you talk about 5 out of the last 9, they've been able to back that up. There's a difference between fan support and passion and energy, and to be able to support your team the way that Alabama fans have been able to do. But then when you have that unreasonable expectations, and when you go back at 196 games, Mark Richt won 145 of those and was one of the winningest coaches in Georgia history, and they ran him out of town. Sometimes you just got to realize that what's really happening is your place in the pecking order. And for me, sometimes you wonder about the influence of crazy fans like Georgia has in Athens, and you back up and you almost wonder their influence on failure.
Well, it's funny. It's all about fate and timing, Ryan, because if Herschel Walker does not come along, and I'll tell you what, the legend has it, and I think Herschel's even told the story. He flipped the coin, Ryan, to decide his final 2 in recruiting.
Oh, wow.
He was from the state of Georgia, as you know, and he flipped a coin, and it was either going to be, one side heads, let's say Georgia, tails UCLA. What if he had gone to UCLA and not gone to Georgia? I can pretty much tell you this. Vince Dooley probably would have been gone much sooner because the national championship bought him so many more years and made him a legend at Georgia. And really, for 3 straight years, Georgia was a contender for the national championship. Could have won almost 3 national titles in a row with Herschel, but came up short a couple of times in his sophomore and junior year. And if Herschel doesn't sign with an agent, because, the times were different then, he would have been back for his senior season. So certainly, Herschel Walker made Vince Dooley, just like Bo Jackson made Pat Dye. There's no question about it. He established that program. Bo Jackson's probably the greatest athlete in the state of Alabama's history. He just revolutionized sports when he came along. Though he was gone much too soon due to injury, which was out of his control. He was, people forget Bo was basically done by the time he was 28. But he was a transcendent athlete and set Auburn up for some extended success that didn't last, as we said. But certainly, I think and history is interesting because if say Aaron Murray leads a touchdown drive and Georgia beats Alabama in the 2012 championship game, Georgia wins the national championship. They're going to mudhole Notre Dame, and Mark Richt is at Georgia for the rest of his career. He would have been like Vince Dooley, probably above Coach Dooley in time as far as revered by the Georgia fan base. But they came up short. Alabama, rightly claimed another national championship, and Mark Richt, as you said, was unceremoniously dumped, even though he averaged 10 wins a year. Now, I think Kirby Smart, he's a Georgia guy. He played for the Dogs. And he was very fortunate to work for Nick Saban as long as he did and show patience in not taking another job. And Georgia, pounced on him thinking that, they could catch lightning in a bottle. And so far, the teacher has schooled every student, and it's not really been close. Kirby has come the closest to beating Nick Saban, but you don't get a trophy for second place. All you do is go put on your red 34 jersey and are the Chicago Cubs of college football and say, maybe next year. And that's what Georgia's doing right now.
All right. Drew DeArmond, what is your biggest question going into fall camp for the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Well, first of all, it's got to be the inexperience in the secondary. You've got to decide who your top 6 are. There needs to be continuity. There needs to be guys, getting reps and, playing in real football games. And I think the next 2 questions would be left guard and right tackle along that offensive line. I think you have to decide who those starters are going to be. And I think the third question would have to be, as far as battles, would be special teams, place kicker, and punter, because Skylar DeLong was so-so, as I'm known for, when he punted in the spring. And then we don't know yet, if how place kicker is going to play out due to Austin Jones now being transferred in from Temple and Joseph Boulevard, being good in the spring, but let's see, how he translates that to fall.
So let me ask you about depth at inside backer for a couple of minutes. Your thoughts of who might be able to step up and provide some depth at the middle linebacker spot here in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I think Joshua McMillan, redshirt junior from Memphis, Tennessee, is going to be counted on. He's someone that's played at times sparingly, but he should know the system by now. He's used to playing inside and out. He's been cross-trained by Tosh Lupoy. I think you'll see him at inside backer. And then you're going to have two young guys. I think you're going to have Markel Benton, who redshirted as a freshman. I thought he had a good spring from Central of Phoenix City. He's going to be someone that'll be, groomed to kind of take the place of a Keith Holcomb, I think, and maybe be a situational guy for Alabama. And then even a true freshman, like Jalen Moody. You've heard some good things about him. He's from the state of South Carolina. I think he was a late bloomer. He was injured as a junior. He's a basketball player, has very good athletic ability. I've heard good things about his football IQ, but certainly he's not going to know the scheme. But he'll probably be fast-tracked and given a job because they just don't have a whole lot of depth at inside linebacker. And I still think, maybe a guy situationally, maybe on some third downs that knows the scheme inside and out, like a Jamie Mosley could be used inside some. We'll see. He's not a quick-twitch athlete, but he certainly knows the scheme. I think much like his brother, has a very high football IQ. So they're going to have to develop some depth at inside linebacker, no doubt. And I will say this. We talked about some of the biggest questions. The biggest concern is if Dylan Moses at weak side and then the Mac Wilson are out for any extended period of time. If they are, unlike last year when Alabama had the Keith Holcombs, they had some other options to play at inside backer like a Rashawn Evans who overcame injury. And a Sean Dion Hamilton before he got hurt. They do not have the depth they had last year and experience at inside backer, so they can't lose either starter for an extended period of time, in my opinion, without big drop-off in 2018.
All right, so here, fill in the blank. Tua Tagovailoa is the starting quarterback at the University of Alabama when they go to Orlando to play Louisville in 32 days if he does what?
Stay healthy.
You think it's that simple?
Yes. I think he is the better player. I think when we saw him not even 100% healthy in the spring, Ryan, but we heard he led a touchdown drive, 5 plays, boom, 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 touchdown in the spring inside Bryant-Denny Stadium during the first scrimmage. Devontae Smith, how ironic, catching the touchdown pass. Then, I think as long as he's healthy, then I think he's going to win the job because it's simply as cut and dried, in my opinion, as talent. He's going to know the system. He plays the game instinctively, and I think he's the best quarterback of the Nick Saban era, bar none. And that's taking nothing away from the great A.J. McCarron. But I just don't think when you look at the intangible, the leadership, the moxie, and the instinct, and then when you look at to his physical abilities. His arm strength, his feet, and his ability to make decisions and throw with accuracy. There's been nobody with this skill set in Tuscaloosa since the days of Joe Namath and Ken Stabler. So I think he's the best player, and I think he's going to be the quarterback in 2018.
All right. So I guess I'm not a rocket scientist, but I can figure out the alternative. Really. If you think Jalen Hurts can be the starting quarterback, you think it's because Tua has an injury. It's the only reason that would prevent him from being the quarterback. So I think pretty easy there. Drew, we always enjoy you spending a lot of time with us, and I'm excited to feature you every single week. I appreciate you for being a part of the show.
Yeah, and just to close out, I guess for the Georgia fans that may be listening, and I'm probably public enemy number one, I got to correct myself slightly in one regard. I called them the Chicago Cubs of college football. The Cubs actually won a World Series. Now they would be considered the Cleveland Indians of college football, as they have not won since 1980.
Let me see if I can explain some of the frustration that Drew DeArmond is under. The Georgia fans have lost their ever-loving mind on social networks. They're crazy. I mean, they are literally crazy. They are nutty. They're like some of our, our Auburn fans magnified by 10. And I'll just leave it at that. Drew, I appreciate you, man. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Try to take a couple of deep breaths and lower your blood pressure, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I'll see you.
Georgia fans.
I'll see you on Saturday, right?
Absolutely. You will see me inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, and, of course, we'll be covering Fan Day Live for ESPN 97.7 The Zone. Looking forward to hearing from Nick Saban, Tosh Lupoy, and, of course, Mike Loxley, and some of the players. Of course, we know we're not going to hear from any quarterbacks. No shocker there. But it will be great to see these young men work out, get a chance to see some of these freshmen, especially the defensive backs, and get to see them in pads, and the one and only Jalen Waddle. And just looking forward to that, looking forward to seeing everyone inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Football is finally here, and I think everybody's super excited. And thank you for having me, Ryan. And just remember, Georgia fans, also another key fact, though we do know the quarterback very well, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Have a good day, Ryan.
Thanks, Drew. I appreciate you. Drew, all fired up. You get him talking about Georgia. You get him talking